Real progress, especially lasting and meaningful progress, occurs in the quiet, focused spaces where you are working without the need for external recognition. The modern world often glorifies the idea of being loud, visible, and constantly in motion. There's a cultural pressure to share every step of the journey, to announce every achievement, and to be seen by others at every stage. But this noise, this constant broadcasting of our actions, distracts us from the deeper, more transformative work that happens behind the scenes. The real breakthroughs, the growth that leads to lasting change, are achieved in silence, away from the eyes of the world. When we work in silence, we create an environment where our attention is completely devoted to the task at hand. There is no external pressure, no audience demanding instant results. In the quiet, you are free to make mistakes, iterate, and improve without fear of judgment or criticism. This process of trial and error, of continuous refinement, is where true mastery is born. It's in these silent, solitary moments that you learn the most about yourself, your strengths, and your weaknesses. You build resilience because you're not distracted by the need for praise or acknowledgement. Instead, you're focused on the long-term process of growth, improvement, and mastery. Working in silence also allows you to be more intentional with your energy and focus. In a world where distractions are endless and constant, the ability to focus deeply on one task at a time is a rare and valuable skill. The more you engage in uninterrupted work, the more your brain adapts to sustained concentration. Your neural pathways strengthen, improving your cognitive abilities, your ability to learn, and your capacity to retain information. This deep work, which is done away from the spotlight, is what leads to exponential growth. It allows you to sharpen your skills and develop expertise, gradually moving closer to your goals. The absence of external validation in these moments is critical. Without the constant need to prove yourself or seek approval, you're able to operate from a place of intrinsic motivation. This internal drive is what sustains you when the initial excitement fades, and it's what keeps you moving forward when the results aren't immediately visible. The desire to achieve is no longer about gaining praise or recognition. It's about achieving something that is meaningful to you. When you rely on intrinsic motivation, your progress becomes less dependent on external forces and more connected to your personal vision, values, and long-term goals. This type of quiet, focused progress also leads to deeper learning and growth. When you work in silence, you are not seeking shortcuts or immediate gratification. Instead, you're focused on the process, and through that process, you gain a deeper understanding of the subject matter or skill you're pursuing. The absence of external distractions allows you to approach challenges with patience and persistence. You take the time to break down complex problems, to engage with them on a deeper level, and to work through them step by step. This is how real expertise is cultivated, not through rushed actions or external accolades, but through sustained, deliberate effort over time. Moreover, the silence of focus work is where creativity thrives. When you remove the noise, both external and internal, you create a mental environment that fosters innovation. The mind, freed from constant distractions, has space to think creatively, to make new connections, and to approach problems from different angles. The pressure to share every idea or solution with others can stifle creativity. But when you work in silence, you give your mind the room to explore, experiment, and discover new possibilities without fear of judgment or criticism. The ability to work in silence also requires discipline. It's easy to become distracted, to seek out external validation, or to take shortcuts when you're not being watched. But true progress requires the ability to stay focused, even when no one else is paying attention. It's about doing the work for the sake of the work itself, not for the recognition or the applause. This discipline builds character, strengthens your work ethic, and cultivates a mindset that values long-term success over short-term rewards. In the end, real progress is not made in the noise and chaos of the world. It's made in the quiet moments, in the spaces where you're fully immersed in the process of growth, learning, and self-improvement. The work done in silence is the work that pays off in the long run. It's the foundation upon which lasting success is built. The external world may never see the full extent of the effort you put in, but the results will speak for themselves. When you focus on the process and commit to working in silence, you're not only building the skills, knowledge, and resilience needed for success, you're creating a life that is grounded in meaningful progress, not superficial validation. Attention is one of the most valuable and limited resources we possess. It's not infinite. Much like physical energy, it can be depleted, redirected, and even wasted. The modern world is designed to pull our attention in 1,000 directions at once. Social media feeds, notifications, advertisements, and the constant stream of external opinions. But when you understand the way the human brain works, especially how it prioritizes information, you start to see the cost of this fragmentation. The prefrontal cortex, which governs executive functions like decision-making, planning, and self-control, thrives in a low distraction environment. Every time your attention is hijacked by your phone, by a conversation that doesn't serve you, or by comparison, you're fragmenting the efficiency of that system. This is why focusing on yourself is not just motivational talk, it's neuroscience. It's how you regain control of your biology. When you place your attention inward on your goals, your daily behaviors, your emotional regulation, you begin to align your nervous system toward growth. You are no longer scattering your mental resources, you're investing them in a direction that creates momentum. And momentum is what compounds into discipline, into mastery, and ultimately into achievement. The reality is we live in a feedback-driven society. People are addicted to external validation. A post gets a like, and the brain gets a dopamine hit. That's short-term reinforcement. But that kind of reward system is weak. It's not built to sustain effort over time. What is sustainable, however, is internally generated reinforcement. When your attention is turned inward, toward the deep satisfaction that comes from progress, from effort, from discipline, your brain starts to reward you for the work itself, not just the outcome. This shift is critical because when your motivation becomes internal, you no longer need applause to keep going. You no longer need to broadcast your efforts in order to validate them. You become self-contained. You become powerful in your own domain. And this is what focus on yourself really means. Channeling your limited attention in a direction that changes who you are neurologically, emotionally, and behaviorally. There's also an emotional regulation component here. Attention and emotion are tightly linked in the brain. When your attention is constantly pulled toward external chaos, conflict, arguments, drama, you end up regulating your emotions through external inputs. That means your mood is at the mercy of other people. But when you learn to turn inward, to be aware of your own thoughts, to track your internal state, you start managing your emotions from the inside out. That's emotional sovereignty. That's power. Focusing on yourself also creates clarity. It helps strip away distractions that aren't aligned with your purpose. When you know what matters, when you've spent enough time quietly reflecting and observing your own thoughts, you stop saying yes to things that dilute your energy. You begin to curate your time, your environment, and your relationships more intentionally. You stop seeking permission and start giving yourself direction. So if your attention is a currency, the question becomes, what are you spending it on? Because whatever you feed with attention grows. Feed distraction, and you grow scattered. Feed comparison, and you grow insecure. Feed self-awareness, growth, and personal mastery, and you build a life of depth and substance. Focus is not just a mental skill, it's a biological act. It's a way of steering your nervous system toward adaptation and resilience. When you consistently invest your attention in yourself, quietly, deliberately, you are changing your brain, rewiring your patterns, and constructing a version of you that cannot be shaken by noise. And that is the foundation for every meaningful transformation that follows. Silence is often misunderstood. In a culture where being loud is equated with strength, success, and influence, silence can appear passive or weak. But in reality, silence is a form of power. an active and deliberate choice that reflects control, confidence, and depth. It's not about avoiding conflict or retreating from the world. It's about preserving energy, protecting focus, and operating from a grounded state of awareness. From a neurological perspective, silence creates space for clarity. The human brain is not designed to operate at full volume all the time. Constant talking, reacting, or explaining forces your cognitive system to remain in a heightened state of alert. It increases cortisol, taxes, diminishes your ability to regulate emotion. Silence, on the other hand, creates the conditions for restoration. It calms the autonomic nervous system, rebalances the brain's stress response mechanisms, and enhances mental clarity. When you stay silent, especially in environments that are noisy or reactive, you're signaling to your nervous system that it's safe. That stillness cultivates internal awareness. You begin to notice the subtle patterns in your thinking, the habits in your speech, and the impulses that often go unchecked. This self-observation is crucial if you want to grow, because you can't change what you don't see. Silence gives you the space to see clearly. There's also a strategic advantage to silence. In conversations, in negotiations, in conflict, those who can remain quiet tend to hold the upper hand. They listen more, speak less, and observe what others miss. This isn't manipulation, it's precision. Speaking just to fill space dilutes impact. But speaking with intention after observing and understanding carries weight. People who talk constantly are broadcasting their internal state. People who choose silence are managing it. In daily life, silence can help you reset. In the quiet, your brain activates the default mode network, a system responsible for introspection, memory consolidation, and creative problem solving. This is the same network that activates during meditation, long walks, or moments of deep thought. It's where your best ideas often emerge, not when you're talking or reacting, but when you're still. Silence is not the absence of activity. It's the space where the mind integrates. There's also the issue of emotional regulation. Speaking impulsively, especially in moments of anger or insecurity, often leads to regret. But staying silent gives you time to assess your emotions, time to choose your response instead of reacting from a triggered state. This gap between impulse and action is where maturity lives. Silence strengthens that gap. It creates emotional distance that lets you act with precision instead of emotion. On a practical level, silence builds discipline. When you choose not to respond to provocation, not to share every update, not to chase attention, you're training your nervous system to hold tension without release. That's resilience. You are no longer driven by the need to explain, prove, or perform. You're grounded in something deeper, your own awareness. And when you learn to be quiet in a noisy world, your words become rare. And rare things are valuable. Choosing silence also protects your intentions. When you keep your goals, struggles, and process to yourself, you maintain energetic integrity. You're not giving away your focus to every comment or question. You're not exposing yourself to the dilution that comes from explaining something that isn't finished. Silence becomes a container, a boundary that lets your vision grow undisturbed. In the end, silence is not about isolation. It's about discernment. It's about recognizing that not everything deserves your voice, not every reaction requires a response, and not every thought needs to be spoken. Silence is clarity. Silence is control. And those who can master it don't need to announce their strength. It's evident in how they carry themselves and in how little they say.